This one quote has helped me to understand how to create the self-discipline I've been lacking to accomplish all the goals in my life and ultimately completely change it. Every day I would wake up knowing that I needed to get stuff done. But for some reason I could never find the self-discipline in myself to just do those things. Whether it was studying, writing, working out, going on a run, or doing any task that just bettered my life, it just wasn't happening. I was so depressed and desperate that I devoured every book that I could on getting things done, motivation, goal setting, productivity. And I learned about all these amazing productivity tips like eat the frog and break your bigger tasks into smaller ones, and the 2-minute rule. And while these methods I'm sure are great once you get started, my problem was just getting started. I felt like I needed self-discipline first before I could even use any of these tips. It wasn't until I stumbled across this one phrase from the book The Motivation Myth that my life actually started to change. And it gave me the self-discipline to start taking action in the first place. You feel motivated because you took action. Motivation is a result, not a precondition. You don't need motivation to break a sweat. Break a sweat and you'll feel motivated. That quote and learning how to follow up on it gave me a huge realization. First, you have to understand that in the self-development world and society, we are taught that high achievers just have more motivation. All these self-help gurus can't seem to shut up about find your why and visualize what drives you and make a vision board. Like these are all magic keys you need before you even have the ability to take some action. To be honest, even for myself, I'm guilty of pushing those ideas onto people. And while they do kind of have some merit, when I did them, it made me feel like I was doing something, but when I really thought about it, it wasn't anything that was pushing the needle forward. Motivation doesn't come from any of those things. Motivation is a result of taking action. For years, I felt like a failure because it seemed like my dreams and even my fears weren't strong enough to get me to do anything. How do you even overcome that? All those stories about millionaires that had shitty lives that drove them to success. Was I doomed from the start because I had a decent upbringing? That can't be true, right? Maybe right now you're feeling that way about your life. If you are, let me be the one to tell you that your past and your upbringing has nothing to do with your ability to actually achieve your goals, actually achieve your dreams. Sure, it can play a part, and it did for a lot of people, but you don't need to have a shitty life in order to achieve big things. Once I knew that the motivation was just beyond the work, I really started to change my goals and the process to achieve them. You can still become that ultra rich, crazy, successful person that achieves everything you ever want. Because knowing that your desire and drive actually has nothing to do with you accomplishing your goals is insanely freeing. I know it was for me, at least. Understanding that you first have to do something before you even feel motivated broke down a barrier in my mind. It made me realize that so many things are possible. Once I knew that, the process to do these things changed. Now let's address the elephant in the room. I know what you're thinking, but what if the work you need to do is too overwhelming to even get started in the first place? I struggled with that too. Another tip this book had that I needed to know was that if your work feels too daunting, make a smaller goal. In fact, your goal shouldn't be the outcome you're trying to reach. Your goal should be just to get started in the first place. If you're trying to build self-discipline to go to the gym and work out for an hour every other day, and you never seem to find yourself even doing it, that's because your goal is your outcome. You haven't built enough discipline yet to do that much. First, your goal needs to be to work out in the first place. You do that by making your goal so small that it's impossible for you not to get started. Forget going to the gym, that's a huge barrier. Make your goal something simple like 10 push-ups a day, or 5 push-ups a day if that's too much, or 1 push-up, it doesn't matter. The key is to make your goal small enough to easily get started, but large enough to reach that point of motivation for you to keep going. You might have to experiment with this a little bit for yourself, but for me, I find that that point is 2 minutes. I know that once I've worked for at least 2 minutes, the ability to continue working is exponentially increased, nearly to 100%. And then I have no problem continuing the work. Also, if your goal is small and you accomplish it every single day, that actually eventually builds motivation and momentum as well. And that is also how you create self-discipline. In order to have self-discipline, you need to do everything you can to build the habit first. Since I've learned this, I've actually been able to sit down every single day and work towards my goals. Because even though I'm not counting on it, a few minutes of me working on a task ends up being a few hours. And knowing that, I now have the confidence to know that I could build the self-discipline for pretty much anything I want to achieve in my life. You feel motivated because you took action. Motivation is a result, not a precondition. You don't need motivation to break a sweat and you'll feel motivated. That's how you create self-discipline.